but this should work well.
Okay.
All right, we will go. So I'll call to order this meeting of the Committee of the Whole of April 26, 2021, and ask if there are any late items to introduce this evening. CAO.
I have no late items for introduction to this meeting.
Perfect. So then I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Any opposed? All right, that's carried. And adoption of the prior minutes, that would be for the April 12th, 2021 Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Any opposed? Perfect. So straight into water matters. We have the 2018-20 to 2022 strategic plan first quarter update, and I'll turn things over to the CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got this wonderful echo going on.
Yeah.
This report is in front of you today to provide you with the first quarter of 2021 update on your strategic plan that started in 2018 and is to end in 2022. You did have a couple of other planning sessions last year, and some things were changed around. You might want to also consider setting a date to review the strategic plan for 2021 and determine if there are any changes that need to be undertaken once you have your new CAO in place. Included with your priorities is the action plan that has been developed for accomplishing each priority. And this action plan has quite a few different updates in it. I could go through them if you like, but I'm sure that everybody had a good read of the document itself. And there were some that were changed due to budget adjustments being done during the budget time. So dates did have to be modified for undertaking some of those projects. I do talk to the cold shelter initiative in this report, and did provide a slight update with regards to how it's going forward with Desert Sun Counseling. So if there's any questions with regards to that, I'm more than happy to answer those. I also list out what I've been doing over the last little while, and a lot of recruitment has been going on this quarter. So, and we have also the feasibility study has been awarded, so that is moving forward, as you all know. Also attached are updates from each of the departments, and should you have any questions, I am here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions or comments? Not everybody at once. I'm just scrolling back and forth. So if I've missed anyone, just yell it out. Nope. Okay. Well, thank you for that report. I have one comment. It's not really a question, and it's just on the in the walkable communities priorities. I noticed that the edible pathways, it says it's on hold for 2021. I know that we didn't provide money in the budget for the food action advisory coordinator, but just in that discussion that we had around budget time, I had asked if there was money in the budget for vegetables versus flowers. We had a bit of a discussion around that, and I thought that the conclusion was yes, that money was there and that would go ahead. So I'm just disappointed to see that it's not, and I hope it's not a permanent thing and that it's something that we can count on returning next season. So at the very least, I'd just like to see us have a conversation before moving ahead next season. And my only other comment was that I do think it's a good idea that we get together to look at our strategic priorities once again, once we have the new CAO in place. So I imagine that we'll do that sometime this summer. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that there is money in the budget to support the harvest hut itself. So that was where the funds were, I do believe, were with respect to the harvest hut itself to provide that support there for the volunteers.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think, as I mentioned in the conversation that we had back at budget time, I think that for projects like this, I mean, specifically the edible pathways, it takes a couple of years for things to catch on and for people to know what's going on and to know, for example, that they can walk downtown and pick things out of the planters. So I think that we were at a place where we were just starting to get some momentum, and it still was going to take a few years. So to kind of cut it short, then maybe start again, just feels like a stop and go process. But anyways, like I say, I hope it's just a comment. I know things are already planted or close to planted, definitely ordered. And I just hope that we can talk about that again, yes, next year. So if there are no more comments, then I would look for a motion that council receive the 2021 first quarter strategic plan and department updates for information.
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any comments? Any opposed? Perfect. And then we're on to our water regulation bylaw 1351 amendments. Director of Operation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff are seeking council's consideration to amend water regulation bylaw 1351. Where staff have looked at a few things that we want to tweak, and finance has offered some suggestions and changes as well. And maybe Marcus can talk to those when we get to them. So what we've proposed, a first change in section 44, it currently reads, in the case of agriculture use, including farm irrigation and indoor irrigation used for application of agriculture chemicals prior to commencement of operation of the private water system in each irrigation season. We wanted to change that in case of agriculture user using domestic water for farm irrigation and indoor irrigation prior to the commencement of operation of the private water system in each irrigation season. And I'll discuss 5 and 6 a bit more. So our next one was number 6, which would be brand new in section 44. And what we were looking for or wanted some wording on was, in case of agriculture's users using irrigation water from a twin system, the private water system is not required to have a backflow preventer. So what we're intending to do, and to meet our conditions on permit and to make IHA happy, and we need to have like some system 2, some users in town, there may be a couple others out there that are using irrigation water for farming. And if they are, we want to ensure that they have a backflow preventer, because if anything happens, back siphonage or a break in the line or pressure increase on their side and pushes anything back into our system, all our domestic water users are safe in the area. And what we're going to do, so we're going to be adding customers that way, but then we're also going to be releasing customers, because we've been debating with IHA for the last couple of years about our irrigation water users and how in the twin systems, if they're fertigating or doing something on the irrigation lines, no one is drinking from those lines or should be drinking from those lines. It's irrigation water strictly. So there is a very minimal amount of risk on that side. So we may be reducing the onus on some of those, which in a lot of the other systems, but that may not take place till next year. So we wanted to get the changes in place now, protect the domestic water, and then let people know that on the irrigation side, if they're fully twinned and they have a domestic service and they're separate from each other, they may not have a need for the a backflow preventer device. So those are the changes that were coming from Public Works, and we had a few little minor changes in section 45 that we wanted to reduce within 7 days. So a test reports in a form of set out from the director must be submitted to the town within 7 days of the test of an assembly left in good working order. We're trying to get on people. A lot of things are done electronically now, and they can send these reports in a lot quicker. And we're kind of getting a lot of the testers involved and kind of getting them on board to send in their test results quicker for the customer. And then the next change was if the test fails, the repair shall be made and the test report forwarded to the town within 24 hours or such other time specified from the director. We usually are lenient, and if we'll put down 7 days or 24 hours, but we usually work with somebody. And if the farmer says, okay, I'm trying to get somebody here to test it, and as long as they contact us and talk to us, we're flexible that way, if it makes sense. And then, were there any questions on that stuff first?
Did anyone have any questions? I've been scrolling back and forth. I haven't seen any hands.
Okay. I only heard crickets, so.
Sounds about right.
Finance proposed changes as well. So they've run into a couple little issues, and I'm not sure, Marcus, if you want to talk to the proposed changes that you've put forward.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I can talk to that. Through to the chair. So section 62, this is just addressing the meter base rate charge. There's nothing specific in the bylaw that stated when a base rate should be charged. We've always traditionally interpreted it as when consumption begins. But we just wanted to add that to the bylaw specifically. So the first change is just adding the stipulation that consumption has been recorded on the meter servicing the parcel, and that would initiate the base rate charge. The second change, same section, we've run into a couple issues with owners requesting that the base rate be removed if their meter is removed, for example, in irrigation, after irrigation season for winterizing. And obviously wasn't in the intent of the bylaw, but there's nothing specific in the bylaw to address this. So this is just simply adding the stipulation that if a property owner requests service to remove a meter to prevent meter damage, the flat meter base rate shall still apply during the removal period. So that's just specifically addressing those kind of loopholes in the bylaw. And the only other thing that we were adding was to the fees and charges section 74. There's a couple customers that we've had problems with freezing meters every season, and it's been kind of a contentious issue. This is just adding a charge for servicing those meters every winter. We would send our utility technician out to remove the meter, store it during winter, then reinstall it once irrigation season starts again. So it's a service that we can provide at a charge. So we've added that that charge at $100 per visit. And those are the only changes that finance proposed. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. So, yeah, I guess we're asking council if they wish to consider amendments to the water regulation bylaw 1351, or if council may wish to refer to staff for additional information, or if council may wish to follow the current water regulation bylaw 1351.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So are there any questions then? For either of the two presenters? Scrolling. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out with regards to the proposed motion that the second part of it should be removed because we would like to keep the water fees in the water bylaw, not to go into the fees and charges bylaw.
Oh, yes. That was my fault. I forgot to take that out.
Okay, so is the first, like the only proposed motion that is there, then does that encompass everything that we want to accomplish?
That's correct.
Okay. So Councillor Mattis.
I'm just going to ask a quick question regarding that last thing about the removal and replacement of meters on a seasonal basis. Is this something we do a lot of? And are we taking any action so that we don't have to do it on an annual basis on these properties? Is it the meter's not deep enough? And what are we doing to fix that?
I could speak to part of that through the chair. We do have some irrigation meters and stratas, and we've pretty much, I want to say, trained people. We've given out keys because there's not a lot of these, and the onus is on the property owners in town for some of these types of services, where they've got a combination service and we're metering the irrigation separately and the domestic separately. So the irrigation is generally a little bit more shallow, and for whatever reason, some of the problems that finance has had, sometimes these stratas possibly have different companies blowing out their systems, and some of the strata members may also change over time, and so every once in a while we run into problems with freezing meters where the previous guy blowing it out used to know what to do, and the one particular meter we were talking about is an 1.5 inch meter, so it takes a little longer to you have to unbolt it, and plus it's a lot more expensive to replace. So if they want us to take care of it, then we can provide that service. Otherwise, they take care of it. And if the meter freezes, then it's their fault and they have to replace it the next time. There's no disputing.
Thank you.
Is that your question, Councillor Mattis?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. So seeing no other hands, never mind, Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to move the proposed motion that council directs staff to bring water regulation amendment bylaw to a future meeting for first 3 readings.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you. Any more discussion on that? So I'll call the question. Any opposed? And seeing none, the motion is passed. On to business. We have building bylaw 1404, Director of Development Services, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to discuss proposed building bylaw 1404 with the Committee of the Whole, which will repeal the existing building regulation bylaw 1140 from 2006. As of 2022, the province is making it mandatory that all Part 9 residential buildings meet Step 3, which equates to 20% better energy efficiency than the 2018 BC Building Code. The province is also making it mandatory at this time that all Part 3 buildings meet Step 2, which is 10% more efficient. In 2032, it'll be mandatory that all Part 9 residential buildings meet Step 5, which is net zero ready, and that all Part 3 buildings meet Step 4, which is 80% better than today's code. To prepare contractors for the impending changes, staff are recommending that Council adopt a new building bylaw, which implements Step 1 of the BC Energy Code for all buildings on June 1st, 2021. This will enable contractors to be familiarized with the process prior to the mandatory implementation in 2022. Currently, there are significant rebates currently offered by Fortis, which are attached to this report. This includes $3,000 to $10,000 in rebates for reaching Step 2 to 5, plus additional rebates for hiring energy advisors and installing energy efficient appliances. The impending implementation of Step 3 of the BC Energy Step Code has encouraged staff to conduct a full review of existing building bylaw 1140 which has been in effect since 2006. Staff reached out to MIABC, who provided a draft core building bylaw that is recommended to be used by all municipalities in BC. They have two versions, one's for smaller municipalities, one for larger, and we went with the smaller one. This core bylaw was created over several years by lawyers with a focus on reducing claims against municipalities. Staff reviewed the core bylaw and made minor changes to make it specific for Oliver. Some of these changes are, as we touched on, the level 1 and level 2 implementations of the step codes. The new building bylaw would see 2 6-month extensions rather than 3 4-month extensions, which will reduce administrative steps. The new bylaw will allow for provisional occupancy in some cases where all health and safety items have been addressed and the owner is wishing to move in early. The new bylaw will have a significantly lower permit fee reduction for the hiring of a registered professional. This includes 5% or $500 max reduction versus the 30% discount under our current bylaw. And that number is recommended from MIABC. Overall, staff consider that the proposed bylaw will not only help to improve energy efficiency in local buildings, but the bylaw will also be updated to best practices in the province for limiting liability and risk to the town. To talk a little bit about the public process, in November 2020, the town held a builder's breakfast meeting sponsored by Fortis. 14 contractors attended the breakfast with a total of 11 surveys being completed. Of the responses, the majority wanted future training for marketing energy efficient homes, new technology and hands-on training, such as the blower door test, demonstration wall assemblies, etc., and new construction techniques. The majority of builders feel that reaching step 1 is feasible, and many of them are going to that step now today and beyond. The summary report completed by the Community Energy Association has been attached to this report. With that, I won't really be going over the building bylaw because it's so lengthy, but at this stage, it is just before the committee for discussion. So if hopefully you've had a chance to skim through it, and if you have any proposed changes or suggestions, I'd be happy to take those down before we bring it back, hopefully on May 10th for first, second, and third reading. So with that, the recommendation is that the Committee of the Whole refer building bylaw as presented to the May 10th, 2021 meeting for first, second, and third reading. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you. Are there any questions for the director? Don't see any hands. And yes, I do. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a fairly extensive list. I don't think we'll be able to cover it all off in the time that we have allotted. I realize that this is a boilerplate that came from MIABC. It is unfortunate that we don't have our existing bylaw beside it so we can see what changes are actually proposed. I would start with section 3 of the proposed bylaw. 3.4 basically says one thing, and then it goes on in 3.5 and 3.6 to kind of say the opposite. I'm a little concerned with 3.6 and 3.7 in regards to what it could do to people, the burden it would put on people that are doing alterations or additions to their home. It's basically if you wanted to add a wall and you open up an existing wall and discover that the insulation doesn't meet today's building code because your house was built 30 years ago, the way this reads, you have to replace the insulation in the house, the whole house. It has to be brought up to code. So I think there's some problems with 3.6 and 3.7 in that area. That would be the first one. I'm not looking for responses, I guess. Maybe the director will be taking notes here. The next one would be 4.7. A person must not interfere or obstruct with the entry of a building official or other authorized official of the town on property and the administration of this bylaw. I have no issues with that, but I was a little concerned with who are the other authorized officials. I think we need a little more clarity there as to who they are. Then we went all the way down to 7.1. Where was it here? Okay, constructing, repairing, or altering a building or structure, including a pool or retaining wall. The concern here was the pool. Does this count for an above-ground pool or just in-ground pools? Because above-ground pools are deep enough that they require fencing and everything else according to the building code. So we need some clarity there regarding what's required, because there's a whole bunch of things that go along with swimming pools, as the director's probably aware, in terms of building code and safety and everything else. Does it apply to above ground pools as well? 7.4. I was quite confused when I tried to read this. I still, to this day, still can't figure out what it means.
I think we're just all reading along with you, Councillor Mattis, if you
Oh, I
want
understand,
to
but
go on the list.
I understand that. That's why I'm pausing.
Yeah.
I don't know where and none of the issuance of a permit under, what does that mean?
Sorry, just to jump in. This is a pretty standard clause from most bylaws where it basically says that even if you get a permit and even if it's approved by the building official, it's still up to the agent to follow the code. So if an owner or if the building official had issued a permit out of a mistake, it's still up to the owner. It's always the responsibility of the owner to adhere to the building code. I could pass that off to.
I understand that, but what is the and none of the issuance? I'm trying to make sense of that.
Sure.
We can take note of that one and have clarification for the next time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we've been doing. If Councillor Mattis, you want to keep going, it's great feedback.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Next was 7.12. Does this mean that if I have to give you 24 hours notice of my intention to go to work? I'm thinking about going to work in a couple of days. I'm intending to. I have to give you written or internet notice of that? I was a little concerned as to what that was asking for.
Do you have many more?
Oh, I've got 7.13.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the purpose of 7.13 is. Is it just to collect another fee because there was a change of ownership or something? My problem was I made notes and sketches on the agenda copy. So now I'm on the other copy and I can't access the agenda copy to try and figure out what I had issues with. So I'm kind of making it up, some of it as I go along. I'll be honest with you.
Sure. I would just, if you have a couple of more, that's totally fine. We definitely have a few more minutes.
7.14.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what is the intent of that? That you have to give notice? Well, I think you've already said that you have to give notice in other clauses, and now you're saying it again. Then I went on to 9.3. Registered, we're adding quite a bit of bureaucracy here in terms of registered professionals and people with papers and this guy and that guy. We're adding a lot of costs to people to do any kind of building in town here. It's when you're hiring all of these registered professionals, it gets quite burdensome. I suspect that even some of the building plans that we accept now, I could be wrong. I may need to be corrected here, but I believe Mr. Montgomery provides many copies of plans and architectural drawings for building permits that we issue all the time. He's not a registered professional. So all of that would have, now you're talking, you have to go to an architect, registered professional. You're talking huge costs and a lot of bureaucracy for all of these things that this particular thing is asking for. I recognize that it's drawn up by an insurance company just trying to cover their butt, but I think it's onerous on the builder. 10.1. Where I'm trying to find out very quickly here. Oh, this had to do with C. I believe we already have a requirement that every building that we build in town must be connected to our sewer system. I could be wrong there. So if that's the case, then C would not apply. Because we don't allow private sewage systems within the town.
Sorry, Councillor Mattis, are you, so 10.1C
10.1C, yeah.
speaks to an approving officer approving a subdivision before a building permit comes in, unless I'm looking.
Oh, I'm sorry, E, make it E. I misread that.
Okay. And so the concern, sorry, can you just say the concern again?
Well, the concern is that we have other bylaws that don't allow you to have a private sewer system. We just don't allow it. Maybe other towns allow it. This is a boilerplate, I get that, but we don't allow it here. If you're building new here, you have to hook up to the system.
Theo, did you have a comment?
I'm going to defer this to the Director of Operations because he was probably going to give the same answer I'm going to give. So I'll just let him provide that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there are some small areas in town that we do not have a sewer system. And so if it was just one building permit, they probably still could have a septic system. But if it was a subdivision, we'd probably force, obviously, the sewage system. They'd have to do an extension.
Okay, so you're down on Sawmill Road, I am assuming.
Yeah, there's some on Sawmill. There's some on the other side of the river on the end of Spillway as well.
Okay.
Down below there. And
you're right. I never considered that. So I guess scratch that one.
Yeah, there's some in the rural area on, was it Road 2 and I think where Councillor Ventimilla's family in-laws live down in that area.
Yeah. And the northwest sector by V-Line.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, my apologies.
We're on page 20 of 54, Councillor Mattis. Let's
well, we're doing pretty good given the time that we have.
5 minutes or so. Think you can get through your list in 5 minutes or so?
Well, I if you want, I can go and speak to the director at another time. To do it all at this meeting, that it's really not necessary. We could communicate and he could listen to my concerns. And if he sees them as concerns, great. If he doesn't, then we'll go from there.
Sure. That works.
I just assumed that everyone would have reviewed the bylaw.
Yeah, and that works for me. I'm not sure if it works for the rest of council. If anybody would like to go through the full list now, just stick up your hand. Personally, I would just ask when we see the bylaw back with revisions, we see this original version that was sent to us. I imagine that's the way it will work anyway, with the revisions that come out of the recommendations that have been submitted by Councillor Mattis and anybody else that has any feedback. Are there any other questions? I had a couple myself, nothing so detailed. Mine were just kind of from the beginning. A couple of comments. So regarding the new bylaw having significantly lower permit fee reductions for the hiring of a registered professional, as noted by Councillor Mattis in there somewhere, we're requiring lots of registered professionals. And I also would like to make sure that we're not making things too onerous or too costly for applicants. I think we can pretty quickly be contributing to increasing costs for building unintentionally. And we don't want to be a part of doing that. I don't think trying to keep building costs low in our community. So I guess my question is, there was a comment that this was suggested by MAIBC, but why such a reduction in fees if somebody hires a registered professional? Director of Development Services, maybe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I'd be interested to know the answer to that. And then my only other comment was, I read in there somewhere, and I can't find it right now, that we have on our strategic plan, somehow using the step code or, advancing, basically incentivizing people to do things ahead of schedule with lowering fees or fee reduction, that sort of thing. And in here somewhere, it says that we're not looking to do that, or it's not advised to do that because of all of the rebates available right now from Fortis. And so then, not being someone who hasn't gone through this process before, how easy is it for people to access, to find that information? Like, is that just a part of the process when they come to the town hall and say, here's what I intend to do? Are we guiding them through, well, if you go these extra couple of steps, here are the rebates you have access to? Or are they meant to search out that information themselves?
Sure, I'll answer that. I'll actually pass it over to our building official. Mr. Patel is online, and he can sort of speak to the process that we normally conduct in these situations.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me, Randy?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, so for the energy step code, Council Ventimilla, what we do is they would hire an energy advisor. For example, in our area would be Jerry Sonkins out of Penticton. So he would submit a report along with the drawings for the building permit application. So based on the step one, he would recommend type of construction that they will do. And basically, I just make sure that it still complies to the BC building code. And then energy step code step one.
Okay, so are we, as a part of that process, would you suggest, if somebody submitted plans and they're going to meet step one, anywhere along the line, do you suggest to them, if you go to step two, here's what you'd need to do, but here's the rebates you have access to?
Yeah, so also when they hire energy advisor, he also sit down with them and consult them. And he would say that if you meet step three, these are the rebate up to $10,000. With step two would be $5,000 to $6,000. So he would advise before they apply for the building permit, because they have to design the drawings accordingly to meet that step code.
Okay, so that has to go to the extra step of hiring an energy consultant?
I provide them with his email address and phone number. The initial consultation is free. He would say, okay, if you want to meet step three, this is the design, like that would meet the step three of the step code.
Okay, so anybody that comes in with a set of plans just on their own, off the street, if they haven't consulted an energy advisor, they're given that information to do so if they choose.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Councillor Mattis.
I'm just following that. It sounds like we're creating a whole new industry for energy advisors.
I think that's been created. Yes, it has. I agree. CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Energy advisors have been around for a long time, because I used one on my house when I did the upgrade on it, and they told me all about all the rebates I needed to get, and I saved tons of money.
Yeah, it's good. It's just good to know that that process works, and it's not some like super secretive thing that you have to know the right questions to ask or the right button to push. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to build as smartly as possible. Okay, so thank you for all of that. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments?
I'll get together with the director to go through my stuff.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we'll be looking for a motion of some sort. I'm going to guess that we're looking for a motion to refer building bylaw 1404 back to staff. And I'd be looking for somebody to move that motion.
I would move that the building bylaw 1404 be referred back to staff for further review.
Thank you. Would anybody like to second that?
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Okay,
I guess sorry, Chair, I just would say that Dennis would come back to the committee of the whole at some point, or would it go, yeah. Thank you.
for further discussion. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Nope, motion carries. Thank you for that. So we're on to item number 2 under business, the South Okanagan Healthcare Auxiliary Society grant and aid request. I'll turn things over to the Deputy Finance Officer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today, this report is to seek Council's consideration of the South Okanagan Healthcare Auxiliary Society's request for a grant and aid in the amount of $8,919. Some background, the Society is requesting a grant and aid in the amount of DCCs paid to the town in relation to the addition to the hospital's thrift store that the Society is currently undertaking. The following is an excerpt of the grant and aid request cover letter prepared by the President of the South Okanagan Healthcare Society, Carol Kraft. And I quote, "Upon review of bylaw number 1172, I take exception to the development cost of $8,319 as we fall under the classification of being a commercial property. But we are a nonprofit business run strictly by volunteers who are all seniors. We feel this is unfair for nonprofit to be looped together with big business for profit. Our store is too small and the need is so great from the community, and especially going forward with the uncertain economic future spin-off from the pandemic. We did comply to redesign the landscape and irrigation as asked, incurring an additional cost of $4,200. But we do not have an unlimited budget. Further expenses will only hinder our mandate and our mission as a society." And I end quote. At the April 14th, 2014 Committee of the Whole meeting, Council set a precedence by awarding Oliver Search and Rescue a $3,200 grant and aid for the amount of DCCs related to building permit 2013-47. Options for Council tonight are: 1, Council can support the Society's request for a grant and aid and allocate these funds from the 2021 grant and aid budget of $10,000. Council can support the South Okanagan, the Society's request at a reduced amount. Or 3, Council can choose not to support the grant request. It is staff's recommendation that staff's recommendation is option 1. And at this time, we have the President, Carol Kraft, joining us tonight. She is joined by Dennis Freeman and Sandy Jones, also from the Society. They will now present their case to Council.
Thank you.
Hello. Dennis is in.
Councillor Grice, you're muted. I mean, Councillor Ventimiglia, Chair.
Oh, I didn't mute myself. I don't know how that happened. Okay, I think the feedback is gone. So we do have some presenters joining us this evening. I did see Councillor Grice's hand go up first. Would you like to make a question, have a question or a comment, Councillor Grice?
I'll wait until after the presentation, if that's all right, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. So please go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, that's me.
Are Carol and Dennis in the same location?
Yes, we are. Yes.
Somebody's got to turn off their Zoom or their volume.
I'll mute Dennis.
They actually have to go to it. One of them has to go to a different room. It will provide feedback constantly.
Carol, you're unmuted at this time. Well,
Dennis.
If it's possible to just have one device on, that's probably ideal. Is it Carol that's unmuted, did you say?
Either one are unmuted at this
not
point in
anymore,
time.
no. We could try to unmute Dennis.
One of them has to move to a different room, or you're going to get feedback constantly. You can't have two systems going on in the same room.
Or they can turn off one of the systems.
Well, that's not necessarily true, Councillor Mattis, because we had the same issue when you joined the mayor one time in the council chambers.
Okay, so it looks like Carol's the only one left on the list, Larry. Let's try unmuting her and see how it goes. Plug your ears just in case. Who has the power to unmute Carol?
Oh, there we go.
Awesome.
Hello
Carol,
there.
perfect. Much better.
Yes, I thank you for giving us time, and that was our summation to our grant application. I have not much different to say today due to the fact that we are a nonprofit, and I feel very strongly that our money goes as we advocate for the community, and we're doing the best that we can, but our building is really way too small and quite outdated. And we are going to update that building as we join with our addition.
Perfect.
So does anyone have any questions for us?
Sure, thank you. We do have some hands up. I'm not sure if they're questions for you or questions for staff, but we'll find out shortly. Councillor Grice.
Thank you, Chair Ventimilla. So I am in favor of the grant and aid. I think that this society contributes greatly to our healthcare system, as well as providing clothing at a low cost. And I think the savings will be reinvested back into the community. That being said, my question is this the best path for DCC forgiveness, doing it through a grant and aid, or is there perhaps a better way to do that? So I guess through to the CAO, please.
Through the chair, the grant and aid is the best way because you do not have the ability to waive your DCC bylaw fees at this through the bylaw itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Chair. My question here is, I thought DCs were collected at subdivision, or that they were collected when a building permit was taken out for the first time. This is an addition to a building. I'm puzzled why we would be collecting DCCs at all at this point. They would have been collected years ago when they were in force, when the building was originally constructed. Is that not how things are done? Like, do we collect DCCs every time someone does an addition to their house? I'm puzzled as to why we're even collecting them.
Thank you. Who wants to take a stab at answering that?
I will, if.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, with commercial buildings and industrial buildings, it's on the floor. DCCs are charged by floor space. And yes, every time there's an addition, we would collect DCCs. The only exemption would be is if they spent under $50,000 doing that addition, then they would not be required to pay for DCCs. But single family homes are collected at subdivision, regardless of the size of the building. Multifamily, industrial, commercials, all by square footage. So yeah, if they make the building bigger, then they're subject to DCCs.
Okay, I understand that. The second question would be, do we have any plans to change our DCC bylaw to give us the flexibility at that, within that bylaw, as opposed to a grant and aid? And if not, could we ask for that to be done?
So yeah, just to add to that, the new DCC bylaw will have provisions for waiving DCCs, but for affordable housing projects. We did not tackle the not-for-profit type situations, and that's aligned with most DCC bylaws. Is they usually only do it for not-for-profit affordable housing.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favor of giving the grant and aid, but I'd hate to see us wipe out almost the whole grant and aid budget with one addition. So I'm wondering if either these funds could come out of the COVID funds excess we have, or the other way, if they come out of the grant and aid budget, if the grant and aid budget can be increased by the COVID restart funds, and perhaps the CAO or the finance officer could shed some light on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Either CAO or CFO want to?
I'm going to ask the CFO to answer that because there are perimeters around the COVID fund that we have to adhere to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my opinion, knowing I don't have it right in front of me, I'm quite comfortable in the fact that these would not qualify for monies from the COVID restart funds.
Okay. I'm following up on that. How flexible are things? I mean, in my short-ish history at the table, we haven't run into a situation where we've had more applications than we have money in a year. But given that, as Councillor Schwarzenberger noted, we'd be using up the majority of the fund in the first couple of months of the year. If we do get requests that go over the allotted amount later on, is there a bit of flexibility there for us to work with, or not? Or not really.
In which budget are you referring to?
Grant and aids. So if we get if we end up getting a few more throughout the year, and we end up having more requested than is in the budget, but to causes that we support, is there flexibility?
What I would recommend at that point, then, Madam Chair, is that a budget amendment bylaw be done later on in the year, because usually there's more than one budget amendment that has to be done, and therefore you would then look for a source of funds. And usually during the year, of course, there are budgets that are underspent, so we would transfer from one budget to another.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Grice, is your hand still up, or is it up again?
It's up again. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess through to the CFO, this might be tough to pull out of thin air, but do we know in the past, few years, I guess, if we've used our entire grant and aid budget? Are we generally hitting the max, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Grice, no, usually we do not hit the maximum of our grant and aid budget. This is a unique situation just because of the amount of the request. It is quite substantial. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. Oh, no, I see Mayor Johansson's hand just popped up.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in favor of this. I think there is flexibility to do a budget amendment, finding some savings in our existing operating budget, or maybe a request would come forward that might be covered by COVID. And in light of that, I would like to make the motion that Council support the Okanagan Healthcare Auxiliary Society's request for 8919 in grant aid, and allocate those funds from the 2021 grant and aid budget of $10,000.
I'll second that.
Oh,
Sure, that's been moved and seconded. So now CAO.
thank you very much. This is a budget matter, so it has to be dealt with at the regular meeting.
Okay, so we'll be, that is not one of our options on our agenda. So can you perhaps guide us as to what this should actually say?
What you would want to say is that this be forwarded, this request be forwarded to the budget or to the regular council meeting being held later tonight for council's consideration.
Is that okay with you, Mayor Johansson?
Yes, yes.
And, seconder, Councillor Grice?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments on the motion? I do have a question that I didn't ask before, just about, I also fully support the ask. I think it's been said that any money that's saved, it's quite obvious that it's going to go right back into the community. I just have a question on the amount. In the report, it says somewhere that the DCC's, the cost is $8,319.09. But the request is for $8,919. And I'm just wondering if I've missed something somewhere along the line.
I can speak to that.
Thank you.
That is a typo. The 8,319 is a typo. The amounts, the correct amounts are in your options. The correct amount is 8,919.
Perfect. Easy. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? If not, I will call the motion. Any opposed? Doesn't look like, so that'll be moving forward to our regular meeting this evening. Thank you to our presenters.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're on to public question period.
Okay, that's it.
And I don't believe that we have
Will it be approved?
public in attendance. Nope. So then I will be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any opposed? See everyone at 7.